Catherine O'Brien, again at happywithbaby.com, and I'm doing another one of my expert interviews with mamas around the country. And I'm so excited because Amanda Zaidman is here with us today, and she's a LCSW in Charlotte, North Carolina, and has her own private practice. So thank you so much for being with us. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your family? What's your family dynamics?
Okay, so I have two children. I have a daughter, Maya. She's 9 years old, and she's in third grade. And then we have a son, Jonah, who is 8 years old, and he's in second grade. And then I'm married.
Yeah.
My husband is Jeff.
Okay, cool. So tell me about, how do you balance being a mom, working, and your relationship role?
Well, so for me, the balance really has landed more towards prioritizing my family.
Okay.
In terms of balancing career and family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that meant when I got pregnant with our first child that I decided to take time off from my career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a clinical social worker. And so at that point I was working in an agency, and honestly, the salary I was making would have probably barely covered a nanny.
Uh-huh.
And I was working with children, and I love children. So my husband and I talked, and it really made sense for me to take that time and spend it raising our kids, being a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that time, I prioritized my career, just keeping up with my CEs, because I knew I wanted to go back, but I was home until both my children were in elementary school.
Oh, okay.
And then with my husband, when they were young, it definitely took a toll on our relationship. But as they've gotten older, it's easier to prioritize that alone time, spend time one-on-one together.
Yeah. I know it's always, I feel like it's a constant like adjustment of like how you do all those things. Cause especially as they grow and age and their needs and stuff change, it's like a constant adjustment.
Yeah.
So I talk to a lot of moms, and they often speak about moments when they're like ready to throw in the towel. Have you ever had one of those moments, and can you describe that and why you felt that way and what got you through it?
Thinking about that, I think the clearest time for me was when I had my first daughter, or my first child.
Mm-hmm.
The first 6 weeks was really hard. She had trouble learning how to latch.
Mm.
And so we had lactation consultants, and it was really important to me that we try to, figure that out. I was willing to use formula if that's what we needed to do, but I wanted to try everything else first.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was a very vulnerable time, just having people touching my body that way.
Right.
And then not being able, it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to pump every feeding. And then after I was done pumping, I would try to nurse for 5 minutes. And then when it didn't work, I would feed her the bottle.
Yeah.
And so we did 6 weeks of that.
Oh my goodness.
And I think a hard piece too was that then we were seeing everything she was getting. And so as she was starting to learn how to latch, then my husband would say, how do you know she's getting enough? Which of course, as a father, looking back, that makes perfect sense that, you saw what she was getting, and now we're not sure. We could see her weight going up, but it felt like an attack in a way, just your body, feeding her. How do we know that you're really able to do it?
Yeah.
So that was a really hard time for us. But she did learn to latch, and she got older. It got so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is like, it's exhausting. That's an exhausting process, and doing all those steps and being a new mom and having all those doubts and stuff like that. It definitely takes a toll. And I know I've heard that from other families and stuff too. So what do you do when you feel overwhelmed, overstretched, or less than?
Well, typically, if I am feeling really overwhelmed, I go to my husband. He's really my rock. He's very supportive. When I'm upset, he takes it seriously, and he gives good advice. And I also try to prioritize downtime for myself. So whether that's yoga or meditation or spending time with my friends, that sort of thing. That's what I do when I'm feeling stressed.
Yeah, that's good that you have that support. I've also had parents tell me that one of the hardest things about being a parent is comparisons and judgments from other parents. Have you experienced that? And then how do you cope with that?
Well, in terms of judgments, that's not really been a big issue for me. Just because I think I tend to gravitate towards women who are kind and supportive, who, you know, are wise, and that's just the people I want to be around. And so the judgment piece, I really can't think of a time when that's been a big issue, but the comparison piece does sort of play in there, because I'm, you know, the people that I'm with, I'm in awe of them a lot of times. So trying to keep up with either what they're doing with their kids or their career, or, you know, they decided to do private school. So what opportunities do their kids have that, you know, mine aren't getting, or just always, you know, comparing, in my own mind. You know, when that happens, I tried to ground myself and recognize that that's not what's important, that's not why we're friends, that it's not important to them. You know, maybe I think we all played this game in our heads. But I'm not thinking that, you know, about them, you know, well, what are they doing, or what are their kids doing? Or, but I think it is very hard. It's a challenge to remember, you know, to just try to worry about myself in a sense.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's almost like coming up with like a mantra or something in our head. Like, you know, it's just here, like, it's just me that we have to worry about, like our family and not everybody else's. Cause there's such a dynamic for everybody has a different dynamic and different needs. And it's not even fair to compare. So I know that's easier said than done. So what do you feel is your greatest personal struggle with the experience of motherhood?
I think for me, something I do struggle with is self-judgment. I mean, I think I a little bit was alluding to that already, but, you know, even just, I've thought a lot about what it meant when I took that time off to be home with my kids. You know, I spent so much time working hard to prove myself through my grades and then in my career. And there was always something almost tangible. You know, I got the A, or I got the raise, or I got the pat on the back. And then being home with my children, it didn't feel that way. You know, I gave more of myself than I had ever done before. But it doesn't end. The dishes are always there. The laundry's always there. Someone always needs you, you know. And so that has been hard. And I think, you know, I hold myself to a high standard. But how do you know that you're doing it right? And it's hard to at times, you know, not take things personally when really it's just, I'm raising my children. They're their own people. They're not me. But when things don't go well, like when my daughter didn't nurse, when one of my kids needed pre-K, even like every time my son talks back and refuses, you know, to do what we've asked him to, just very typical things. It's not always so easy to just normalize that and say, you know, they're being their own person. And you know, I'm doing my best to be a good mom, but I think, you know, having the background that I have in child mental health, and then now, you know, recreating myself as this parenting expert, it's hard to remember, okay, that's being a parent, being someone who understands parenting well doesn't mean you're a perfect parent. And that's okay.
Like there's no such thing as like a perfect parent. But it's definitely easy to be like, oh no, they're doing this. Somehow that is a reflection, like I'm being a bad parent, when it is like, it's so much of it is this like typical child development stuff that they have to go through to become their own person. So that's a good reminder. So tell me something that has surprised you about being a mom that maybe you didn't realize you'd enjoy, or something you didn't know that kids did. Like, cause I know for me, I have a similar background in child mental health as well. But having my own kids like totally woke me up to like, oh wow, like I didn't realize this happened, you know? Or something you didn't know could bring you so much joy. Like what do you love about being a mom?
I didn't know that it would feel like this. I mean, I'm a pretty connected person. I feel my emotions large, with my friends, with my family. So it's not a shock that I would feel this way, but you know what it feels like to just give so much to this little person and then send them off. I remember when my daughter went to preschool for the first time and was like, I can't, like, how is she functioning without me by her side? And then she came home with little stories of this life she was creating. And it was amazing. But it is, you know, all of those feelings are so big, you know, when something goes well, just feeling so happy. When something bad happens to one of my kids, feeling scared for them. I didn't realize that it would feel like this. and it's getting exciting. You know, they're 7 and 9 or 8 and 9 actually. And so they're at ages where it's just really fun. They don't need me as much.
Right.
They're doing things on their own, sometimes things that I don't even understand, like the homework that they're bringing home or
Right.
the chess clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of them, you know, being their own person. And I love it. I love learning from them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is fun. So tell me about your relationship with your partner. How's that changed, and or how has that stayed the same?
Yeah, it's definitely very different, our relationship before we had children versus now. You know, it was easy before we had kids. We were always pretty much on the same page. Having children, it just makes everything more complicated. It makes it harder. But it feels like, having done it this long, that we're a team, and we depend on each other, and we count on each other's perspectives, which often are different. You know, but we each bring something to the table. But yeah, I mean, I think I noticed, like, we went away for an anniversary to Napa for a week, and it was like, wow, like, this is what it's like to be with just you and I having fun without kids. It's so easy. We don't even fight about anything.
Right.
So that, you know, it's harder. But again, you know, I don't know what, I couldn't imagine doing it without him. So it's worth how hard it is. You know, I'm amazed by the father that he is to our children.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to hear. And it is good to have those times where you like can reconnect and you're like, oh yeah, I really like being with you. Like, everything's not always a battle. Like, I like being with you. So this will be good when they move out.
Right.
Cool. So what about relationship with friends, family, or other support systems? How has that changed or stayed the same?
Well, you mean since I've had children?
Yeah.
So I've always, I think friends and family have always been super important to me. Spending time with others. I'm an extrovert. And that has been consistent. But as I've had my own children, I think the biggest change maybe has been the way that I look back at my own childhood and all of the sacrifices my parents made, the respect that I have for my mom for, you know, everything that she did. She couldn't have kids right away, and so she adopted me. Then she had 2 more with my father, but he then was diagnosed with brain cancer before she actually delivered my youngest brother. So he died when I was small, when I was almost 5. And then she remarried. And so there's a lot of drama in the beginning, and then things sort of smooth out. And my mom remarried, and my stepdad is amazing, and I don't think of him as a stepdad at all. But, you know, I knew that, I lived that. And then I became that age when, you know, my mom would have maybe found out that, you know, my dad was sick, and then the age when my dad died, and then, you know, and just thinking about how strong she was and how she was there for us, it just gave a new perspective, to, you know, a whole new dimension to our relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what's the greatest lesson, or one of the lessons that you've learned about being a mom?
Well, I did take this course. I learned it from a parent educator, Elizabeth Crary. It's called Star Parenting. And so I became a facilitator in that. But she has a mantra that's a star parent is a growing parent, not a perfect parent.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that just rings true to me, that's my goal. You know, I really kind of ground myself in that when I'm struggling, when I'm comparing myself, when I'm judging myself, that just any little growth, you know, that's my goal. I can't be perfect, and that's okay, but I want to do better. You know, every day I hope I learn something.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's not a perfect parent. It's a growing parent. Is that what you said? Yeah, that's so perfect. Yeah. So a favorite quote that inspires you as a mom? I think that's a pretty good one, but any others?
That's, yeah, I guess that is the one that I think of. I don't know. I mean, just thinking, that would probably be the quote that stays with me.
Yeah, cool. How about a favorite song that inspires you as a mom or makes you think of being a mom?
There's that song by Sarah McLachlan, the ice cream song, because your love is better than ice cream, and your love is better than chocolate. That was playing once when we have a lot of music in our house usually. and that was playing once when the kids were around me. And I always just thought it was a pretty song. And I mean, thinking about how much I always thought about it in terms of my husband, how much I love him. But when my children were there, and I thought, God, this love's even deeper than that love somehow. And I mean, I think that song makes me think of my kids now.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I mean, I'm sure I probably have heard it, but I'm always terrible about the names of songs. But that sounds
I'd sing
cool.
it for you, but that won't ring any bells either.
Cool. How about you can't live without gadgets or some kind of product or something that has made mom life easier or better for you? Something that you're like, oh, this is cool, or
there's maybe a couple things. Right now we're really into Alexa. I think I said, we love having music, so it's just so easy that before we would have to turn on our phone and sync it to our speakers. But I think she just came on Alexa off. Sorry about that.
She's like, are you talking to me?
I think she's like, but yeah. So just at the spur of the moment, we have dance parties, or we always have something playing in the background. It just changes our mood. And then another big one was definitely, so I really want my children they're getting older. We're thinking about gadgets and devices and screen time. And I want them to keep their, they don't have phones yet, but I want no screens in the room. I don't want computers in the room. When they get phones, I don't want them. Meanwhile, my phone was my alarm clock, and it had been for years. So that meant, it's time for bed, and I'd always get it out and be on it. The kids would come in the morning, and I'd wake up and I'd have to check my emails and my texts and see what was going on. And I found this alarm clock. It's by Emerson. I'm sure there are plenty of them, but it has atomic time, so you don't have to set it when the power goes out, which happens a lot with the thunderstorms in North Carolina. When the power goes out, you don't have to, I figured it couldn't be harder than my cell phone, or I wouldn't use it. And it lets me set the time, the alarm. There's two of them. So there's a weekday alarm, and then on the weekends it knows not to ring. So I never touch it, which makes it easy. And that's made it so that I can sleep without my phone in the room, and that hopefully as the kids get older, that it's in our house, we don't do that. Versus you don't do that, but I use my cell phone.
Yeah. No, that sounds cool. I'll have to check that out, because I was thinking I need an alarm clock, because I was reading you shouldn't have the phone by your bed. I was reading the study, and I'm like, I should get the phone out of my room even.
Yeah, so, I'm pretty sure Emerson makes it. The only downside is it has a bright screen, but you can kind of turn it away.
Okay, so last question is, what is the one piece of advice you like to give other moms? What are your final thoughts?
I think something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is mindfulness. As someone who worked with children and then with parents, I spend a lot of time talking about, how to stop and think before you make a choice. As a child, if you have ADHD, how do you do that? As a parent, how do you stop and think about how you want to parent with intention? And then I would find myself at home with my kids, and if I was tired or I was stressed or I was hungry, snapping at them and reacting in a way that I wasn't proud of. So there felt like there was an inconsistency there. And then I discovered mindfulness, and I feel like that has really been such a gift. It's not just what to do, but it's how, how do you find the space to calm yourself down in the moment, so that you can really respond rather than react. And it's something that a mentor of mine had talked about when, before I ever had children, but I didn't really look into it. I learned certain parts about the brain and the relevant pieces of it, but not exactly what it is. And I wish I had understood it better and started meditation practice before I had children, or even, when they were younger. So that's something I would encourage any mom who's interested in figuring out, how do you parent with intention? How do you really hold true to those values when in the moment we're always triggered by just the amount of stress we have because of multitasking and all the responsibilities we have. How do you ground yourself in those times?
Things fly at us, and then all of a sudden it's like, what? And you yell or you get upset, and it's like, I didn't mean to do that, but how do I stay in this moment and let the things kind of fly, but not penetrate or something? So I think that's such a good practice, and can be hard to do, but I think yeah, with practice, it makes it easier and stuff. So, well, thank you for joining us. Do you have like any other final thoughts or anything you want to say before we end?
I think we've covered everything.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you could be here and share with us your wisdom and your insights and just your little nuggets. So thank you so much, and have a
Thank
good
you.
day. All right. Bye.